My face is not a familiar one at the podium in the forum, so allow me just to say that I am John Thomas of the Kennedy School faculty. Few of us have had the privilege of knowing someone well who then went on to become president. And watching that rise is a very exciting process. However, it does also present one dilemma. And that dilemma is that somebody you have been used to calling by their first name, you now have to address as Mr. President. And that's very easy to forget at times. But Mr. President, with your permission, I would like to, referring to our time before you became president, I would like to use your first name with your permission. So, thank you. Alejandro Toledo's rise is what we Americans would like to claim as a typical American success story, except this one is a thoroughly Peruvian story. He was born in a large family in the Andes, and his family moved down to the coastal area in search of better economic opportunities. As a young man, he worked at many different odd jobs, but was clearly talented enough that he won a scholarship. He did well in primary school, won a scholarship to secondary school, and excelled there so that he was awarded a scholarship to study at the University of San Francisco. He went to San Francisco, still supplementing his income with many different odd jobs, but there I noticed something very interesting. He also had a soccer scholarship when he was at the University of San Francisco. So what Peru gained as a president, it lost as a soccer player. But it also explains to me something that I will refer to in a few minutes about his athletic prowess. After the University of San Francisco, he studied for his PhD at Stanford University and received a PhD in economics. From there, he returned to Peru and taught economics at the Universidad del Pacifico. In those years, he was very active in development issues. He wrote, he lectured, and was a consultant to just about every large development organization, from the World Bank and the IDB to the ILO and the UN agencies. At that time, I won't attempt to go through publications at the time, but he was certainly a prolific faculty member and thinker about the issues at hand, and wrote a book on economic growth and structural change. In the early 1990s, he came to Harvard as a visiting scholar at the Harvard Institute for International Development, which, as you know, no longer exists. But this is where I had the privilege of getting to know him. We often talked, had meals together, interacted at that time. And we also, and this is where I was fascinated by his athletic scholarship, we also played tennis together. But I was very sure that we played doubles and I was on his team. That seemed to be the winning strategy. And I will say for him that his values of friendship and loyalty outweighed his competitive spirit. He never threw me off for somebody else who was a better tennis player. He also, in roughly the same period, was a visiting professor at the University of Waseda in Tokyo, and extended his academic links to Asia. After returning from his time here at Harvard, he became a professor at ESAN, Peru's leading business school. And in his role there, he and I worked together in developing an executive program for the last second-year students at ESAN to give them more of an exposure to the international arena and dimensions of globalization. My last contact with him was in discussions about a institutional linkage between the Kennedy School and ESAN. And I remember we met up here in the Feinsod room on a Saturday morning, about 6 of us, and discussed, we were evolving these plans fairly well. And at the end of the discussion, we agreed we needed to meet again. And as he was going out, he came up to me and said, "John, I may not be able to make the next meeting because I'm going to run for president. And I must confess that I thought to myself, he's a neophyte at politics. I suspect we will see him back again soon. But little did I expect that we would see him back in the role of president. As most of you know, in 2000 he ran against President Fujimori. Although President Fujimori was constitutionally banned from running, it was a very competitive and hard-fought election. But Mr. Fujimori, with the levers of power available to him, declared himself the winner. There ensued a set of protests and marches against the obvious miscarriage of justice in the election. A very well-known and internationally publicized march in which, in July of 2000, in which Alejandro Toledo led a protest march against Mr. Fujimori. It turned violent, and that was the beginning of a process that eventually led to Mr. Fujimori's leaving. There was an interim government, and in May of 2001, a new election was held in which President Toledo was the clear winner. I'm fascinated to hear what he has to say about the ensuing period, leading an emergent country that's been used to an authoritarian leader that has poverty, has great disparities. It is no easy job. It calls for the most in courage, in talent, and in leadership. I think historically we will look back at President Alejandro Toledo's period as president as doing two immensely important things: restoring democracy and ousting an authoritarian government, and second, and if anything more important, beginning a period of inclusion in Latin American politics. He was the first to represent in important ways the indigenous people, but we also see that what was started in Peru spreading to other countries. While we may not like the short-term results of some of these elections, we have to be very clear that this is in fact the practice of democracy, and that it is a very important step forward for the continent of Latin America and indeed for all the world. It is a great privilege for me to be here introducing President Alejandro Toledo, to welcome him back to the Kennedy School, and I hope you will join me in welcoming him to speak on economic growth and democracy in Latin America. President Toledo.
I need some help over here. Professor John Thomas, my friend John, Governor Jane Chahine, Director of the Institute of Politics at Harvard University, my friend Nick Petropoulos, Theo Panayotou, Mr. Bill White, former director of the Institute, Minister of Foreign Relations, Ambassador Oscar Maurta, Minister of Agriculture, Manuel Manrique, Ambassador of Peru in the United States, Eduardo Ferrero, distinguished members of the delegation that General is accompanying me now, and this historic day for Peru. I return once more to Harvard after 4 years. I was over here in April of 2002 when I just began the job and I was just beginning to learn how to govern. But it's a mixed feeling because I have walked some of these halls. And I remind me when Harvard had the generosity to host me as a visitor and scholar, as John have said, at the HIID. And here I wrote a book. Here I learn a lot. Here I prepare myself for the challenges that came later. One never chooses when to be a president. In a way, we are victim of the circumstances. This is a privilege to be a victim. I want to begin by saying to the John Kennedy School of Government, to the Institute of Politics, to Harvard University, from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much for having received me for 4 years, from 1991 to 1994, because to a large extent, my preparation for a sane democratic conspiracy began over here. Secondly, with humility, but with firmness, I'm coming once again to Harvard to report to you, as a citizen of Latin America and the developing world, to report to you what I have done, and you will be the judge. History, better, will be the judge who will determine how much we have accomplished, how many mistakes we made, what's left still to do. But I come over here as a sense of gratitude to report to you, through you, to Harvard, to the young people, what it is to be a president, particular president that for the first time in 500 years, coming from the ethnic composition that I come from, the first president that was democratically elected in Latin America from the Andean background. And that's the beginning of social inclusion. My friends, one of the greatest challenges that Latin America confronts today is democratic governance. Democratic governance. As you would imagine, coming where I come from, and John knows a bit about my life, the central aim of my administration has been, it is, and it will be until I die, the issue of poverty and social inclusion. Poverty and social inclusion. I cannot forget my origins, and I have the enormous responsibility. If we do not confront the issue of poverty in Latin America, poverty might conspire against democracy. I've been receiving a lot of claps from Wall Street, but I hear a lot of noises in Main Street in Latin America. And so to reconcile the responsible management of an economy producing the results that I will report to you humbly, we should not lose perspective that growth is just a means. It's a mean to reduce poverty and to provide democratic governability in the region. Otherwise, people are angry, are impatient, and poverty could conspire against democracy. I have to announce, and I cannot hide the emotion of having made a significant step today in Washington. After 4 years, today at 1 o'clock, I have signed a free trade agreement between Peru and the United States. That is the freshest result that I can report and share with you. When we received the country in 2001, July 28th, I made a commitment to my people, to my country. The priority are poverty and social inclusion. How much have we advanced? How much progress have we made in that objective? The basic premise is that we cannot reduce poverty by insulting the dignity of the poor, giving away fish. We have the normal responsibility to provide the means that our people will learn how to fish. And I don't know a better instrument in the world than nutrition, health, and education. Nutrition, health, and education. This is not a theoretical proposition from a former university professor. Neither is a political speech. I'm the walking evidence of what education can do. I'm one of 16 brothers and sisters. I was born at 12,000 feet above sea level. Very typical of the statistics of poverty. 7 of them, my brothers and sisters, died the first year of their life. And John has well put it, my family, very typical of that during the 50s and 60s, rural-urban migration. And so, I was a shoeshine boy. I sold newspaper and simultaneously sold lottery. So I became prematurely adult at the age of 6 years old. I cannot forget that. I have an enormous responsibility over my shoulders to comply with my people. I have no doubt that the path that I have walked to get here as a president and now have the privilege to be in this podium is through education. But in my case, is the result of a statistical error. That's what I am. It's not because Peruvian society was very open and provided social mobility. How does this guy comes from the Andes, goes to San Francisco, to Stanford, to the World Bank, to Harvard, and then to run the destiny of the country? This is an enormous privilege. Poverty. But in order to confront poverty, you have to be responsible in making that your economy grows in a sustained manner. The name of the game is not to redistribute the poverty. I don't want that everyone is equally poor. That's not the name of the game. Economic growth is just a mean. The ultimate objective is that the benefits of economic growth changes the social phase of our countries. And that's why we have decided to become an agriculture president, figuratively, agriculture president. I planted a tree. I put in water, give some love, responsibility. And I now have to report to you that coming to the conclusion of my administration in 4 months, with all humility, reporting to you that the economy for 56 months have grown sustainably at an average of 5.5%. Last year, 2005, we grew up 6.7%, and this year we're going to grow 7%. Sustainably. sustained rates of economic growth. But more than that, the internal composition of growth has changed considerably. We are not dependent only on exogenous factors such as changes in the prices of the mineral or the commodities in the international market. We have decided to begin obtaining our independence by developing agro-industry, agriculture, agro-industry for internal consumption and for export, tourism, and micro-entrepreneurship, activities that are labor-intensive. We can provide some aggregate value. And we don't have to depend so much, we still are, but we're not so much, from external factors, such as the changes of the prices of the minerals in the international market. We're trying to redraw the energetic composition of our country. We have gas, the project, the Camisea gas, trying to convert the use of gasoline to the gas. And we have gas for 40 years. Besides, I don't want to depend from the countries that they produce oil, because we are net importers of oil. So I'm reporting to you that the economy has been growing the last 5 years almost, 5.5%. Inflation, 1.5%. Fiscal deficit, 0.5%. I'm embarrassed. %0.5%. Country risk, one of the lowest in the history of the country. International reserves is at its peak in the history of Peru. Over $15,000 billion. When I assumed office on July 28, 2001, I made a commitment. I want to double the income from exports by the year 2006. I can report to you that by the time I leave office on July 28, we will triple the income from exports. We receive it in $6,800 billion. Now we are around $18 billion. I also made my commitment that I want to double the salary of the teachers in real terms. In real terms, because we have no inflation. Fiscal deficit again. I don't know what the fiscal deficit in the United States is, but I'm not going to ask the question. The next president, I'm reporting to you, is going to inherit a growing economy, diversify growing economy, markets. We have opened up the markets in China. We are selling grapes, Mr. Uba. We are selling grapes to China. That's a small market, 1.3 billion Chinese. I'm not an ambitious person. I just want 5% of the market. We open other markets. That will inherit the next president. We have signed a free trade agreement with Thailand. We're selling fishing products, asparagus, mangoes, avocado. That will inherit the next president. Next president will inherit the export of gas to Baja California and Mexico. $1 billion a year. And that will imply 300 million of fiscal income. That will hurt the next president. I want to report to you that Peru now is a country that is undergoing a severe decentralization from a country that was predominantly centralized, where the power was concentrated in Lima. I have no problem in sharing power. The next president will not have to go through what I did when I inherited the office, because I inherited office with a country with a very fragile democratic institutions, a very low collective self-esteem, because there was a president who had a high popularity and went through the back door to hide in another country and to resign by fax, Hitchcock, or political severalism. You can imagine what the self-esteem of a country is. People don't believe. The next president will inherit a country with a little bit more of patience, hope. The next president will inherit a country that is in blue and green. Blue because the macroeconomic data is strong. I'm an agricultural president. And I still am an Indian and a slave. I'm working for the next president because he's going to come to harvest. That's fine. But the country will benefit. The next president will inherit assured 2 points of GDP. 2 points of GDP. Assured as a result of the free trade agreement that we have signed today at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. But in addition, we'll inherit close to a 1 point additional of GDP for the exporting liquefied gas to California and to Mexico. That will inherit the next president. I had to plant it. I can continue on the macroeconomic results. But it's fair to pose the question, to examine the other side of the question. What are the social benefits of this growth? Well, as you well know, first you have to plant it, to water, to take care of it, and then harvest. Now that the plant is growing, it's green, it's ready to harvest, I have to go. But that's democracy. Fujimori, a very bright man, before he changed the constitution 3 times, and when he fell down, he had enough time to change the constitution so no one else can go through re-election except himself. I respect the constitution. What has been the benefits of this economic growth? Not as much as I would have wanted. The next one. If the next president has the wisdom and the intelligence, and if he thinks about the country, then he will harvest. He will harvest. But there are some signs already of the social benefits of this economic growth. Just let me share with you a little bit, some data. Unemployment has dropped, not as much as I would like to. We have generated 1.6 million new jobs as a consequence of impulsing agro-industry. We have created deliberate social policy. I don't believe in trickle-down purely. There is no time. People are impatient. The noises in Main Street is very loud. So we decided to go with some deliberate social policies. I decided to cut military spending 23% the first day I assumed power. 23%. I reduced military spending to reinvert it into health and education. That's very tough to do in a country in Latin America where militaries are very powerful. Unemployment has dropped, not as much as I would like. The informal sector has reduced some, not as much as I would like. Income collection has increased, not as much as I would like. We, as I return to Peru, I'm going to do the last increase of teacher salary, and that will be 100% increase in real terms. We have increased the salaries of the medical doctors and nurses, 42%. We have increased 100% the salary of the judges in real terms, and it has not worked. That's part of the pending agenda. But I cannot, in democracy, you cannot interfere into the other institutions. The next president will inherit a country that is less poor, not as much as I would like. But let me share with you some of the results on poverty. We received, in 2001, poverty in Peru was 54%. 54% of Peruvians were living below the line of poverty. Now, it's 48%. 6 percentage points, not 6%. 6 percentage points is not enough. But we're beginning. The harvest is still not, we're just about to begin. Rural poverty, it was 77% when we took office. Now it's 68%. Extreme poverty was 20%, defined by those who live with less than $1 a day. Now it's 18%. That's 6 percentage points. That really is a reduction of 20% of extreme poverty. It's not enough. I'm not satisfied. The next president is going to harvest, is going to have the possibility to reduce even more if he really goes in this direction and if he continues with a responsible management of the economy. But it has come the time to make a deliberate efforts to distribute the benefits of economic growth. Otherwise, I'm not pleased with the collapse from Wall Street. I'm concerned about the noise and the angry on Main Street. I could continue reporting some social results like rural electricity. The indices of rural electricity has improved considerably. The United Nations report, the World Bank report, shows that rural electricity index has improved considerably. But perhaps one of the data that I want to report to you, you will be the judge. History will be in charge. When the political passion will low down, then history perhaps will be more fair in judging us than today's journalist or today's political passion in the middle of the election. All these results, we have done it within the framework of an absolute respect to the democratic values. Absolute respect for freedom of the press, for human rights. These hands are not tinted with blood. With respect to independency of the institutions. And we have in my delegations people from the press, and they know it, and it's tough. They brought down my popularity because I didn't want to give in and to do decisions that will increase my popularity temporarily, falling into populism in the short term. No, I'm stubborn, and I stick to it. And so I had to pay the price. My popularity, some of them say that I went to 10% approval. When you are an agriculture president, you have to pay the price. You have to buy the plant, fertilizer, the water, take care of it, the cost of labor before you harvest. We have done this within an absolute respect for the democratic values. And it's hard, because I had members of the mafia who do not still, until now, forgive me, that I mobilized my people to recuperate democracy and freedom. I didn't do it alone. With millions and millions of Peruvians, that only with the force of the dignity, without money, we brought down a government that was embedded with corruption and dictatorship, who took all the institutions of the country. And so, to govern in a transition period, with open wounds, with fragile institutions, with a low collective self-esteem, it's not easy. My friends, Latin America is confronting this issue of democratic governance. But that should not lead us into the temptation of going back to 70 years ago, of doing short-term populism that might bring increase in the popularity in the short term, but sentencing the poor people to be poorer over the medium and long term. No one single government can reduce to zero poverty, but we should not lose track. We should not lose perspective that the ultimate objective of the state policies are the poor. Are the people who were excluded, who also have the right to participate in the political, economic, and social life of a country. We have changed the Constitution to include the Andeans, the Amazons, the Afro-Peruvians. It has created a lot of problems. How come you open up the doors of the palace for so many people who come from the mountains and from the jungle? I don't know how they let me in, but I'm already in. So they're in trouble. The social inclusion. There is a current in Latin America. There's a voice that's saying, hey, let me in. But that shouldn't be interpreted that if you want to be in, it should not take place at the expenses of excluding to those who already have been in. This is not a revenge issue. It is just an equality of opportunity. And finally, I want to be clear about the message. Democracy. This last Sunday, there was an election in my country. And there is a winner. By 10 o'clock at night, I knew there was a winner. Democracy. They haven't finished up counting the votes yet. It's a very close call. But democracy already won. And I'm not ready to tint my democratic curriculum. I wanted an absolute, clear, transparent elections. And thank God it took place. 200 international observers. My friends, in Latin America, it's not enough to be elected democratically. It's not enough to be elected democratically. We have to govern democratically. I know it's tough. I have wrinkles and white hair since I was last over here. It's not enough to be elected democratically. We need to govern democratically because that strengthens the institutions that we need to provide continuity, stability. I hope that God will provide the wisdom to the next president, not to undo whatever we have advanced. I hope that they will correct our mistakes. but I hope we don't fall again into the pendulum of trying to refund the country each time there is a new election. The poor cannot wait any longer. Because poverty is my central concern, I believe in private investment. But private investment accompanied with delivered social policies of the government. My friends, maybe in about 6 or 5 months more, when I close this chapter, and when I had done an inventory already of the more detailed results that I'm reporting it tonight, maybe I will try to do the merits that Harvard will invite me one day more to report to you more in detail, and maybe poverty will be less than it is today. This institute plays a critical role in opening up the dialogue to examine with the distance of observing what's going on in that region of the world. So this forum, I saw it the first time, 1991. I remember coming to hear the President Clinton over here when he was in campaign. It's a forum that I respect. And I want to tell you through you, John, through Theo and Nick, through the director of the Institute, in the name of my people, my collaborators, and the members of my delegation, the entrepreneurs, the newspaper people. Let me tell you from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much for receiving me. Thank you for allowing me to share whatever little, middle, or big we have done. Let history say its word. For the time being, this is the data that I have, and I'm glad that I can report it to this institution, and particularly to the young people. God bless Latin America. God bless the academic institutions that provide the forum to share these concerns, debates. Thank you very much.
President Toledo has very kindly consented to take some questions. As you all know, I'm sure the system is that we have 4 microphones here, 2 on the floor, 2 on the balcony, and I would ask anybody asking questions first to identify yourself, and then second to please be sure you're asking a question. I will take the liberty of, after a few sentences, if there isn't a question mark, of asking you to make it a question. Let's start over here on the right.
Hi, my name is Eric. I guess I'd like to start by congratulating you on, with luck, being the first president of Peru to serve out your term successfully without a coup or. And second, the front runner as of the first round of the elections, which occurred earlier, I guess yesterday, has attempted a coup against your predecessor. His brother attempted a coup against you. And large majorities of the Peruvian people, polls indicate, neither want to nor think that they do live in a democracy. And I'm wondering if Ollanta Humala wins the election, do you think that democratic institutions in Peru will survive?
Well, I hope the next president, whoever is elected, he or she, will have the wisdom of not making the same mistake that Velasco did or Fujimori did. I said that part of the difficulties that I had is trying to govern within a framework of very fragile democratic institutions. Dictatorship comes always with corruption, and they take over democratic institutions. And so if Mr. Ollanta is elected, I hope he's smart enough not to try to mess around with democracy, because the country already went through one experience. And if that happens, I want to be clear. I'm a soldier. I'm a fighter for democracy. If somebody, after all they went through, after everything we went through, and a lot of people, somebody tries to undermine democracy, I will be once again in the streets. And I will put myself la vincha otra vez.
I hope Ollanta Humala will hear your message. My name is Pedro Guevara. I'm a Peruvian, graduated from the Kennedy School in the year 2000. I used to work maybe in the same desk you were here at the Harvard Institute of International Development, next to Theo Panayotto, who went up. And a guy told me, your president was seated in the same place you were here. You are now here, but a few years ago. My question is related to what you said to a Peruvian newspaper a few days ago about the things that you would have liked to do, and that's related to education. And my question is, what would you like to if you had the chance to run for presidency again, what would you like to accomplish in terms of developing an education alternative for so many Peruvians that don't have that chance right now?
It is always easier to forecast the past. And so, hindsight, there are two issues that, in my judgment, are pending. A severe reform of the judicial system. And if I will have to do it again, I will put at top priority the issue of quality of education. It's not enough to increase salary 100% in real terms. We are asking now the teachers, hey, you have to put your part. You have to spend more hours in class. You have to prepare yourself, because we need to improve the quality of education. So if you ask me, what will be a reprioritization if I will have to do it again? By the way, I'm not running for president. I'm going to come to Harvard to rest for a while. Quality of education. Quality of education. And that means teacher training. That means testing. That means increasing salaries as a function of their performance. That implies giving more computers, more books, better teachers, and put a higher budget for education, but trying to obtain a higher rate of return to the investment in education, particularly in the size of the quality of it.
Mr. President, thank you for sharing your ideas and your experience with us. My name is Felix Maradiaga. I'm from Nicaragua, mid-career MPA student. I apologize for asking such a basic question, but I'm really interested in your perception now at the end of your term, and it's the issue of populism. And you mentioned the lack of what you, I believe, called lack of collective self-esteem or something like that. How do you explain that despite all the efforts and all those amazing numbers that you showed, there's such a huge discontent, not only in your country, but all over Latin America, and all these people that call themselves leaders still have such a tremendous support, and I refer specifically to Mr. Garcia and Mr. Fujimori.
People are impatient. People are saying, hey, democracy is not giving me some basic needs they have, a decent job. How can I get faster from the line of poverty or extreme poverty? The debate is not ideological any longer. People are waiting for concrete results. That is why it could lead to the temptation of short-term populism that undoes the management of the economy that will harvest later. There is a study that just came out from, well, almost a year from the United Nations. And that's really discouraging results. That study indicates that 54% of Latin Americans would prefer an authoritarian regime to a democratic one because authoritarianism provides immediate results. Yes, giving away fish. But that's not a solution. Giving away fish is really insulting the dignity of the poor. They don't want to be asking. They just want to have the opportunity to have good quality of health, nutrition, and education. And that's medium and long term. So your question is very, very relevant. How do we do in the meanwhile? How do we tranquilize that impatience? How can we communicate them? Hey, hold on. We really are working for you. When I took office, I didn't have a honeymoon, political honeymoon, because there was a president, extraordinary person that has been also a candidate in this election, Dr. Valentin Paniagua. He took my honeymoon. So when I got in, 3 days later, people said, Toledo, hey, you gave us democracy. Now I need jobs. And I went in now. We were coming from a recession. I cannot redistribute it. Poverty. We need to grow. It's like planting a plant. That's what I said as an agriculture president, but someone else will harvest, but ultimately the country will benefit. Education.
Hi, Mr. President. Thank you very much for being here tonight. My name is Colleen Gross. I'm in my first year of the MPP program. Last summer, I was in Peru, and while I was there were some pretty intense protests going on against both you and your policies, specifically with free trade and privatization. The cities of Arequipa and Pisco were pretty much shut down with rocks thrown in the road and a lot of demonstrators in the city. And so, given that you are yourself a person coming from a poor background, and given that you see your main priority and challenge as working to end and fight poverty, I'm wondering if you can kind of reconcile the deep anger and that many of the poor themselves feel towards some of the policies, and what you're doing to try to convince them that that your policies, specifically privatization and free trade, will in fact benefit them.
Conducting the destiny of a country in Latin America where people are angry, impatient, it's not easy. And it takes the decision of making state policy thinking in the next generation rather than making government decisions thinking in the next election. I'm not running for a president. And so I had to pay the political price to deliver the results that I shared with you. It's not easy. It would have been easier to play populism or redistributed poverty. Maybe my popularity would have risen. There is anger, yes, because we're waiting for 50 years. But please, I'm just a small human being. I cannot resolve the 50% or 54% that we had in the poverty. We have made some progress, and I said, I'm not satisfied. But we need to continue. We need to continue. Someone has to pay the price. But let me report to you that as the election went on, now, depending on the poll, I'm between 25 to 36% approval, increasing. And just, if you know something about Peru, just wait until the results of the election, and then you ask me the question. What is the popularity and how do you persuade them? Let them compare. I do not want to confront one candidate versus the other. This is not a personal issue. This is a social issue that requires continuity, stability. But departing from the main premises that reducing poverty is the name of the game. Now, free trade agreement. Friend, I would never sign any free trade agreement that goes against the Peruvian unemployment production. Never. There is a negotiation and cost-benefit analysis. If the benefits are greater than the cost, then you sign the agreement. And that's what I have signed it. In place, signified jobs, the agriculture. Now we're going to be able to export it to the United States. Grapes, mangoes, avocados, asparagus, paprika. And that generates jobs. Jobs. Now, we need to connect the micro entrepreneurs with the medium and big ones. Change production. Generate jobs that will generate personal income as well as fiscal income. And with that fiscal income, increase expenditure, investment in nutrition, in health, in education. I pay the price. That's why I don't want that price to be paid in vain. So I hope that the next president will have the wisdom to continue over our accomplishment and to correct our mistakes.
We have time for one more circuit. Let's go over here.
My name is Elizabeth Linos, and I'm a student at the Harvard College. Mr. President, I wanted to ask you why, when you've been presenting yourself throughout this speech as an agricultural president, as someone who plants the seeds in health, education, and nutrition, under your presidency, Peru's expenditure on education was the lowest in Latin America. So I was wondering if that translates to your other emotional commitments to health and nutrition as well.
Well, let me share with you some of the data. I said at the beginning that July 28, 2001, I reduced military expenditure by 23% to reorient it to health and education. And we spent $1 billion budget in education. So you have to compare from when I began to what I'm living now. I said that the quality of education is a challenge because I'm absolutely convinced, you're not going to no one can take me out of it, that the best way for a country to develop socially, political stability, economically, with a medium and long-term vision is education. But education by itself is a medium and long-term maturity. It takes 18 years to see the results. You cannot, in 4 years and a half, expect that you will change everything if you want to do it democratically. Another question.
Hi, Mr. President. Thank you very much for being here tonight. My name is Rose Leonard, and I am a junior at the college as well. And I actually have been to Peru twice. I've been there to serve with a medical team, and I've been twice to the Cusco area where we've seen the needy around, in the villages around that city. And my question for you is, considering that your main concern is poverty, what have been your administration's successes and failures in enabling indigenous communities to access healthcare services, or public health necessities like clean water or medications for parasites?
Well, as I said, we could not wait until growth is sustained over 5 years. I hope it will continue the next 15 to 20 years. And that's why we began by having some delivered social policies, particularly for the poor and the excluded one. For example, I said for the first time in history, the poor people who do not have a permanent employment and consequently does not contribute to the Social Security. As you know, the informal sector is very expanded in Latin America. The people who sells gum or cigarettes in the street, they don't have Social Security. But they're human beings, they also get sick. So we have established a program that now benefits 11 million Peruvians, poor, who have Social Security, minimum Social Security, Seguro Integral de Salud. Free, absolutely free. 11 million. And most of them are in the rural area, particularly in the states that have been more hardly hit by the terror of 25 years ago. Second, rural electricity. Third, temporary jobs. We cannot wait until have a permanent job when the economy grows. We began with some temporary jobs that we call a trabajar urbano for the poor. Water. Still a long way to go. But we have to start it. I used some of my connections in the international community to get some loans, some cooperation, precisely for rural electricity, for water, for these temporary jobs. A Trabajar Urbano is not a program that we invented. There are some direct subsidies that we are doing now. We're paying $30 a month. It's nothing. But the poor, directly. The program is called Juntos. And we give them $30 to the poorest, particularly, again, in those areas in which the terror were more harsh. But we don't give it free. First of all, we give it to the mother, not to the father. Secondly, we ask something from her. You have to do the prenatal checkups and postnatal checkups. Secondly, you have to take your kids to be vaccinated. Third, you have to take your kids to the school. And you have a card. You have a card in which it's checked. If they comply with that, we give them $30 a month. Direct. Well, we couldn't do that from the beginning because we didn't have money. Because I received the economy in recession. Now we have, and we have to take care of that. And you're right. Cusco is one of the areas in which poverty is concentrated. So is Puno. So is Ayacucho, Huancavelica, Apurímac. But that's my central concern. That I cannot come to this forum and report, hey, I grew up, the economy is growing sustainably. We have all the claps from Wall Street, and we have been able to eliminate poverty. No. And it's going to take several governments. If we make a priority, poverty.
I'm afraid we've run out of time. I'd like you to join me in thanking President Alejandro Toledo and inviting him back.
The last remark, right? John, let me, through you, say it from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for this opportunity to share, to be questioned, to be submitted to scrutiny, to learn the concerns of the young people. Thank you for for being my friend. And please do tell the authorities of the university and my friends Nick and Theo Panayoto and John Thomas. Thank you very much for allowing me to come to report to the people what we have done. Is it little? Is it medium? Is it big? We don't know. I'm not a judge. But I'm going to write something about my administration, and I'm going to share it with the young people and with you. Thank you very much.